Let me show you two brands. Brand A has 400,000 followers across Instagram and TikTok. Their content gets views, they run ads, they have a website. On paper, they look like a real brand, but every time they drop a product, they struggle to sell. Their comment section is full of people saying, fire, and then moving on. Nobody's really buying. They're loud and invisible at the same time. Now here's the math that should keep brand A up at night. If you have 400,000 followers and you sell a product for just $3 and then every single follower buys it once, you have made $1.2 million. One product, $3, done. Now that sounds laughably simple, and it is until you try it, because the truth is a lot of brands with 400,000 followers cannot sell a $3 product to even 1% of their audience. That's how broken the relationship is between the number and the reality. Now let's look at brand B. Brand B started in a garage, no funding, no retail stores, no celebrity endorsements, just a 19-year-old with a sewing machine and a laptop. Within 1 year, a single product sold out in about 30 minutes. Within 8 years, the brand was worth $1 billion. Same industry, same type of product, completely different results. The difference is not the budget, it's not luck, it's not even the product. It is that one brand understood something most brands never figure out. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what that is. So the first step is that you need to decide what your brand actually is before you post anything. Now, most people start with content. They pick a niche, start posting, chase trends, and then hope a brand emerges somewhere along the way. That is backwards, and it's the first reason most brands stay small. A brand is not your logo, it's not your color palette, it's not even your product. A brand is the answer to one question. What does this stand for when nobody is trying to sell anything? Nike does not stand for shoes. Nike stands for the belief that every person has an athlete inside of them. Gymshark doesn't stand for gym clothes. Gymshark stands for the belief that fitness is a lifestyle. It's not a phase. And that the people living it deserve gear built specifically for them. That distinction changes everything. So when you know what you stand for, every decision becomes easier. Who to work with, what content to make, who belongs in your world and who does not. So when you skip this step, you become brand A. Your content performs based on whatever the algorithm rewards that week. Your audience has no reason to stay. They follow you the same way they follow a meme page, and they will unfollow you just as easily. Before you post another piece of content, answer this honestly. If your brand disappeared tomorrow, what would the people who have loved it say they lost? Not what product or what feeling or what identity. If people cannot answer that clearly, that is your first problem to solve. So before you go any further, let's run a quick diagnostic. I want you to write down 3 things on a piece of paper or a note. First, what is your brand's one-sentence stance? The thing it stands for when nobody's selling. Second, scroll through your last 10 pieces of content. For each one, ask, does this reinforce that stance, or does it exist just because it was trending? And then third, look at the top 3 conversations happening in your community, your comments, DMs, or group. Are those conversations about the same stance, or are they about shipping times, memes, and random topics? If your brand stance is a sentence, your content is a paragraph, and your community is a conversation, and they don't match, you have a misalignment tax. Now that tax is paid in lost sales, wasted ad spend, and burnout. The brands that scale fast, they don't skip this audit. They do it every quarter. Step 2, you build your content around your one true thing, not around trends. So once you know what your brand stands for, your content has a filter. Every piece either reinforces the identity or it does not. If it does not, you do not make it. So brand A sees a trend performing and then just jumps on it, gets views, chases the next one, more views. But none of those views are building anything because the people watching trend content are not the people who would ever buy from the brand. The numbers grow and mean less with every post. This brings me to something worth addressing directly. Some brands look at these hollow numbers and decide the shortcut is just to buy followers. They pay for a large audience that was never earned. And while it might make a profile look credible on the surface, it's one of the most self-destructive things a brand can do. Not just because platforms eventually penalize it, but because you're now performing to an audience that does not even exist. Your real followers, the ones who found you genuinely, are now watching content that is being shaped by fake signals. Your algorithm performance tanks. So your engagement rate just completely collapses, and any investor, partner, or serious collaborator who looks past the numbers will see this immediately. You've not built an audience, you have built a lie, and lies, unfortunately, do not convert. Now, Gymshark never chased trends outside of their world. Every piece of content from the beginning was about fitness, progress, and the identity of someone who takes their lifestyle seriously. Transformation videos, training clips, community challenges, everything pointed in the same direction. By the time they had a large audience, that audience was full of exactly the right people. People who lived the lifestyle. People who saw the content and felt it was made for them because it was. Now, to be fair, there's a way to use trends without losing your identity. The rule is simple. You can adopt the format of a trend, but never the subject. So if a trending audio is about relationships, for example, but your brand is about fitness, don't use it to talk about relationships. Use the same audio style to talk about your relationship with your workouts. So if a meme format is about awkward moments, don't make it about random humor. Use it to show the awkward moments of, failing the lift. The format is the container. Your identity is what goes inside. Now, when you do that, you get the visibility of a trend without diluting who you are. The moment you start making content about topics outside of your one true thing, just because they're popular, you invite people who would never care about your brands. And those people skew your data, confuse your algorithm, and they leave as soon as the trend ends. The question is simple. What is the one thing that your brand can talk about endlessly that connects directly to what you stand for and that your ideal customer genuinely wants to consume? Find that intersection and stay there. Build authority in that specific space until the people who care about it know your name. Now let's move on to step 3. Design your community around a behavior, not a topic. This is the step most brands just skip entirely. And it is the one that separates brands worth millions from brands that eventually just plateau. Most brands think a community is a comment section, a Facebook group, a Discord server where people just talk about products. That is not a community, that is an audience with a group chat. A real community is built around a shared behavior, something people do together, not just talk about. Gymshark did not build a community around gym clothes. They built one around the behavior of people who train seriously and track their progress. Their Gymshark 66 challenge asked members to commit to a personal goal for 66 days and document the journey publicly. People were doing something together. The result was over 134,000 videos created by the community, 11.5 billion views on TikTok, and organic reach no advertising budget could buy. The clothes were almost secondary. The behavior was the product. Now, let's meet Stock Supply Co. This is a fictional brand, by the way, but you would recognize the pattern immediately. So Stock Supply Co. launched in, say, 2021. It's a lifestyle brand, strong aesthetics, clean websites, and they grew to over 250,000 followers in 18 months, posting motivational content, behind the scene reels, and, product shoots. The engagements looked healthy. They built a Facebook group with, say, 12,000 members and then called it their community. But inside that group, conversations were generic. People sharing memes, tagging friends, occasionally asking when the next drop was. Nobody was doing anything together. They were an audience that had been given a room to sit in. So when Stock Supply Co. launched their third collection, they expected their biggest sales day. They sold just 11% of the inventory in the first 48 hours, and the rest sat in their warehouse for 3 months. The community looked real but had no behavioral foundation. Nobody in that group was doing something together, something that would make the brand necessary to their lives. They were consuming content, and content consumers do not buy with the same conviction as community members do. So ask yourself about your community. What are people doing inside of it? Not saying, not sharing, doing. So if the answer is nothing, you do not have a community yet. You have an audience, and audiences will leave the moment something more interesting shows up in their feed. Step 4, connect all three. So each one feeds the others. Brand is your identity, content is your voice, and community is your behavior. When all 3 point in the same direction, you get something almost impossible to manufacture artificially: growth that does not leak. Gymshark's brand said they exist for people who take fitness seriously as a lifestyle. That statement defined who the content was for, who belonged in the community, and what that community would actually do together. Their content was evidence of that identity, not advertising. Their community lived that identity publicly every single day. So our fictional brand, Stock Supply Co., could say something like they stand for ambition and the hustle lifestyle. But what does that mean as a behavior? What do people living that identity actually do every day that the brand can be a part of? Nothing was ever defined. Their content attracted people who liked the aesthetics, not people who were doing something. Their community had no real anchor. So 3 things existing separately, pointing in different directions: high follower count, low conversion, exactly like brand A with their 400,000 followers who could not move a $3 product. The fix is never a new content strategy or a rebrand in isolation. The fix is going back to the foundation. When brand, content, and community are genuinely aligned, every new community member becomes a potential content creator. Every piece of content attracts better members. The brand identity gets stronger every time someone lives it publicly. That compounding effect is what builds million-dollar brands, not one viral moment. A system where each part makes others stronger every day. Now, everything I've said applies whether you have a team of 50 or you're building alone. In fact, when you're a one-person brand, alignment is even more critical because you don't have the resources to compensate for misalignment with ad spend, even though I always say that probably wouldn't work as well. So if you're a solo creator or a founder doing everything yourself, your brand identity isn't a corporate mission statement. It's the specific lens you bring to your niche. Your content isn't a marketing department. It's how you show up every single day. And your community isn't a Discord server you feel pressure to manage. It's the small group of people who comment thoughtfully, reply to your emails, and share your work because it resonates with their own identity. The same principles scaled down. Identity first, content as the filter, community as the behavior you share with a few dozen loyal people. That nucleus, when aligned, can grow into something massive without ever feeling overwhelming. When brand, content, and community are aligned, the way you make money changes. Misaligned brands fight for every sale. They run ads to people who have seen their content but feel no connection. They discount to move inventory because urgency does not exist in the community. Every sale requires effort and spend. Aligned brands sell because their community sells for them. So when a Gymshark member shares their 66-day transformation and tags the brand, they're not doing it because Gymshark asked. They're doing it because completing that challenge meant something real, and Gymshark is a part of that story. That post would reach people who trust the person sharing it. The brand enters the room it never paid to be in. That is the million-dollar mechanism. Not the ads, not the influencer deals, the community member who tells the story because they genuinely lived it. So before spending anything on paid advertising, ask yourself whether your brand content and community are aligned well enough to existing members who would voluntarily tell people about you. If the answer is no, more spending will not fix it. You're filling a leaking bucket. So you get the alignment right first. Then amplify what is already working. The brands worth millions are not necessarily the ones with the biggest budgets. They're the ones where the identity is clear, the content is consistent, and the community behavior is specific enough that growth becomes a natural consequence of showing up every day. Just in closing, Brand A has 400,000 followers, like we said in the beginning, and cannot sell a $3 product to 1% of them. Brand B started in a garage and is now worth over $1 billion. Ben Francis was delivering pizzas for £5 an hour when he started Gymshark. The system worked, not because it was built expensively, but because it was built correctly. Once again, identity first. Then content built around that identity, and then a community built around a behavior that identity creates. All three connected so tightly that each one feeds the others. That is it. That is the whole thing. The brands doing this are not operating with secrets. They're just operating with discipline, and that is available to anyone willing to do the steps in the right order. So if this video changed how you think about your brand, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are not sure which one to tackle first, here's a rule of thumb. Fix your brand identity if you can't clearly answer what you stand for. Fix your content if your engagement rate is low relative to your follower count, and fix your community if people consume but never participate. Most people try to fix content first because it is the most visible. But if your identity is unclear, no amount of content will attract the right people. And if your community has no shared behavior, even the right people will drift away. So start with the foundation, identity first, then voice, then behavior. Do them in that order and the rest becomes easier. Drop in the comment which of these three: brand, content, or community is the one you know you need to fix, and you could just, reach out to us on the Ideeva Lab website. We're always happy to have a conversation. I'll see you in the next one.